Alrighty, we are live. Hello, everybody, all zero of you that are watching at the moment. I am here with Nachi Free. Uh, just so everybody knows that hasn't paid any attention or anything like that, I watched a video of his on the Florida shooting that recently happened. I disagree with a couple points, but for the most part, I agree with the video. And I wanted to have a discussion because personally, I find this type of event big enough excuse me, that we need to start having discussions about it because nobody really talks about it. And in my opinion, we have a problem with. I'm not going to single out liberals because I know some of them are. I know a lot of them are pretty smart, but we do got a problem with the left side just yelling to ban whatever the hell they killed people with, and the right saying no. But part of this, I just wanted to have a discussion. I wanted to pick Nachi's brain a little bit and see what we think should be happen mutually. So, Nachi, you want to introduce yourself for any people that haven't seen you before?
Yeah, man. First of all, thanks for having me on, man, for inviting me. And yeah, I mean, hey, it's funny. I was about to put myself down, like self-deprecating humor always goes a long way, I guess. But no, the honestly, I mean, fucking, I'm a YouTuber, dude. So what I have to say at the same time, as a citizen and as a voting citizen, man, and somebody who is a gun owner, is sure as shit not taking his points from the Huffington Post or Vox or fucking Democracy Now or any of that shit. I'm definitely not of the quote unquote left, but I am starting to see it. This is a problem that it's already starting to affect. Like it seems to be a statistic, and I think of it like as a radar that's just expanding and expanding. Like its waves are getting wider and wider. This is, in my opinion, this is a bigger problem than radical Islamic terrorism in this country. We have not had radical Islamic terrorist attacks to the number and extent that we've had mass shootings. That's, I mean, and I wish, and dude, if I'm all for pointing out bullshit and lethal bullshit from the quote unquote left again, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, when it comes to fucking that, the immigration and all that, even immigration here. But people also need to fucking point out the false narratives that you see on the right. And when you see people like Ben Shapiro, and when you see Laura Ingraham, oh my God, with the fucking ashes from Ash Wednesday. Hey, everybody, look at me. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And you're gonna actually talk about AR-15s being safe. Fucking something's wrong there. And that's one of the things that I want to point out. Sorry if I ran on there.
I guess that's fine. Like,
could you hold on hold on 1 second? I'm sorry. I got my hold on.
Alrighty.
Anyway, sorry about that. You were saying?
That's fine. But yeah, like I had a thought and I lost it.
Well, I got quite a few thoughts that I wrote down. So if you want, I could be rattling them off as you try to remember.
Oh, yeah, that was one of the first points I was gonna say. Is like I would start with this one. Like, because this kind of determines whether I agree or disagree on the AR-15s being safe. Like, what do you define as safe exactly?
Well, I mean, no gun to a large degree is safe. I mean, they're designed to kill, but the high capacity rapid fire possibility that you get with an AR-15 as opposed to that you would get with a Glock 45. And I was talking to an AR-15 owner who was telling me, and I don't believe this. And I'm not saying the guy's lying. I'm just wondering if the guy's like really timed this out. He says that you could do just as much damage with a Glock 45 if you have enough clips than you would with an AR-15. And I don't think that's true. I think an AR-15 makes that spray and what's it called? I think it's spray and pray or some shit like that, where you could literally like shoot 20 bullets in like 10 seconds or something like that. Like a pretty outrageous rate. Man, that in the hands of the public, and especially at an easy available reach to a mentally disturbed teenager, there's something wrong there, dude. I mean, you go ahead and tell me, but
I'll put it this way: to some degree, I would agree with you. Like, the one thing that I will point out, I I tried to get Sinatra Says on here because I know he owns an AR-15, but he's not very good at responding to DMs, so he probably didn't notice I messaged him. But to my knowledge, because he's talked about this a little bit, because he does a lot of stuff that involves the Second Amendment, especially when something like this happens. But what he's told me is that he agrees with banning automatic weapons. He said that in a few streams where he's debated people that are more strict on guns than he is. But to my knowledge, you have to modify an AR-15 to get it to fire that way. I don't know how rapidly that kid's AR-15 fired.
Well, no, right. I don't know how fast his did. I know that supposedly for Omar Mateen, and I shouldn't have mentioned his fucking name. Anyway, that piece, but the piece of shit from the fucking Pulse nightclub. I was reading that he was able to get like 20 shots. Like it was recorded, like 20 shots in like 9 seconds. You know, that's wow. And if they're not lying, if that's not fake news, if that's not a Russian troll, because I don't even know what to believe anymore, but there's a, you know, something with that type of capacity that's already beyond self-defense. You know, that's how to kill a lot of people at once. It's meant for the military.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like what I've said on those is like I'm very specific on certain things like this. Like I'm not against people owning heavier guns, like guns that are like go up the chain. I'm sure there is a limit. I would have to know the types of guns and their capacities to suggest exactly what I think would be the limit. But excuse me, I'm not against people owning some larger guns. The thing I'd start out saying that we should do is I don't believe in like banning the AR-15, but I do believe in making laws stricter and making sure that the authorities are responsible for enforcing these laws. Because one of the biggest things that pisses me off about this is we had laws in place that should have prevented this. They had 39 calls to the police. The FBI was looking into this kid. Florida already has, to my knowledge, has laws that say that he should not have had that gun, but nobody bothered to enforce it. And then the biggest breakthrough that I heard today that pissed me the hell off, because this is something I fully support, is there was actually an armed officer at the school. He didn't go in.
Wow, why? Why didn't he do that?
I haven't gotten the full story. I'm willing to look into it a little more because that's one of the things that pisses me off. Because one of the biggest things that I think we should start looking into is armed guards at schools. Now, I believe in strict training for those armed guards, like a strict mental health check, strict firearms training, regardless of whether they've had previous firearms training, just to make sure that they are certified safe to be at the school. And place 3 or 4 of them at each school, maybe more depending on the area of the school and how big the school is and so on and so forth. There's details that you'd have to specify per school, but I believe that's something that we need to do because like I've had a few people that are opposed to this idea because they don't like the idea of a gun being on campus, but at the same time.
Yeah, no, neither do I, dude. And I was going to say, like, I'm not, I know I should probably have been a little more careful with what I typed into the title of the video. And I said banning AR-15s. I'm open, obviously, especially for now. Like, look, I'll be specific. You know, I'm not just going to say gun control, change my mind. No, man. To be specific, number one, it's odd that he was not old enough to be able to buy alcohol, but he was old enough to buy an AR-15. I find that very ironic, and yet I don't find it conspiratorial because it's obviously some sort of incompetence or not fully thinking things through. He's not legal. He wasn't of legal age to buy a handgun. That's the weird thing. Like he couldn't buy a handgun, but he could get an AR-15. And by the way, I was reading up on the people who sold him the gun, the store owners. They've closed shop. They immediately closed shop. They're like, we are so sorry. We're all for gun regulations. Like you could only imagine. These people must be like, what the fuck? They've got, yeah, I mean, I guess you could say you got blood on your hands no matter how sorry you are. It's weird. It's weird. I know, because dude, I've gone to gun shops myself. I've been a patron. You know, uh it's uh it's a very dicey thing, because I definitely don't believe in an outright ban, much less taking away the Second Amendment, and let alone a fucking confiscation of guns. Fuck no. But
yeah, confiscation. I guarantee you that's going to end in a civil war.
no, and it's just so unnecessary. I think it, with just a couple of tighter regulations, and yet not having to go so far as to have armed guards at school. I mean, maybe undercover armed guards that the kids won't even notice. Maybe the janitor is really a fucking Navy SEAL guy.
Oh yeah, see, because
driving right now.
Yeah, because see, that's another thing that I've said too, is I'm also totally for now strict, again, same strict training as I would require for a regular armed guard, but same thing for arming teachers. Like you got like I've had people argue, is like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Give the 90-year-old kindergarten teacher a freaking Glock, and I'm just like, no, you fucking idiot. When I say arm a teacher, that means they are physically fit enough to carry a gun and to fire a gun, and quick enough to be able to respond to such an event should it happen.
But then what's going to happen to all of the teachers who aren't physically fit, or anyone, like, I don't know, I'm sure there's a teacher somewhere who doesn't have an arm. What happens to them? Do they just automatically lose their jobs just because all teachers have all these physical requirements now that they have to meet?
Well, no, I'm not saying that as in their job. I'm saying, like, put it this way. Let's take our school, for example. Let's say the principal, I'm just going to go with the principal that we had there, but I'm not going to name names. But let's say the principal that was there when we were there.
Puffy.
Yeah, but I am actually live on the internet, so I'm not going to mention names. But
that's why I said Puffy.
But yeah, let's say he was one to carry on campus. Now, he's physically fit enough, he could probably actually respond to that. So I would say start with, he has to go through very strict firearms safety training and get a concealed carry license. And then before he can even get the license, he also needs to go through a strict mental health check to make sure he himself isn't going to snap one day and just kill everybody.
That's what I think they should require for purchasing guns anyway. They need to go, because a lot of, like, hey, stop it. A lot of, like, the psychopathic tendencies and stuff like that can pretty much be predicted from stuff that's gone on in the person's past, or stuff that you can find going on in the brain before it actually happens. So a lot of that, if people were required to get a psych evaluation before purchasing a gun, we would be able to say, oh, you have the likelihood of snapping, or you have psychopathic tendencies, or whatever, so no, sorry, we can't get you this gun. I think that's what should happen, because then all these people that are psychopaths and shit that have guns wouldn't be allowed to get them anywhere.
Yeah, not only that, there's that, and also the thing as far as like arming teachers and shit, I don't know, man. I don't want to live in a society where now all of a sudden everybody, like, the solution is more guns and more security. I don't think so. I think if there were a way, look, here's something else I really wanted to point out on this stream, and I don't know, see if you guys have done your research on it or what you know about it, but follow the money trail. I mean, I don't want to like go with the average liberal conspiracy theory of, ooh, the NRA and the lobbyists and all that shit, but I don't know if you've seen their latest videos with this chick. I mean, it looks like Demi Moore. Oh, and almost sounds the same name, Dana Loesch or Dana Lash, whatever her fucking name is. That is a cutthroat lawyer. That, like, at least this one person I know told me I should watch their video, and of course this person, thinks that she's fucking saying everything, is great, and she's destroying the liberal lies and all that. And yet I watched that video and I'm like, you guys don't need to be that defensive. And yet they know that because of the things they've lobbied for, man, you've got these things happening. I have to assume that. And again, I don't want to get all self-righteous and shit, but I think there's no denying, man, that there's definitely some culpability on the shoulders of the NRA with this. We could say I'm just as guilty for being a gun owner myself and not speaking out before, whatever. But when you actively push for legislation that creates the type of loopholes that allow this to happen, you kind of know what you're doing. I don't know. That's just me, but you tell me what you guys think. Am I still on?
No, you're still on. I'm an idiot. I was switching up the audio because my brother can speak a little better and actually hear what's going on. But I'd say a couple of things. Like, number one, I do agree with what he said as far as that being the requirements to get a gun in general, because I do believe that the first time you get a gun, you should be required to go through regular common sense gun safety classes, regardless of whether you're getting a CC or getting it for hunting, or I don't care. You should have to go through that to make sure you're fit to hold a weapon. But adding to that, like, the other thing I would kind of say, though, like with the NRA stuff, like, I do want to look in a little more into stuff that the NRA does and see how much of that stuff is true and how much is false, because I hear that from everybody. And part of the thing that makes me doubt that is that they always blame the NRA anytime a gun crime happens, with the exception of the shit that goes down in, like, Chicago. Nobody blames the NRA for that.
No, granted. I mean, but for example, for her, like, and for me, I don't really even need to. I'm just applying a little bit of logic to this. Me just watching her speak, you know, it just goes to show that it seems, unless I didn't see that part, but man, not a single moment of like, we are so sorry for the victims of Parkland, as well as almost every other mass shooting, but especially the ones in schools, especially where it was a teenager, and because that's the thing, he may be of legal age, but he was still a teenager, can acquire a weapon of that. You know, there was just none of that. It was all about, oh yeah, well, what about you guys? And what about this? And what about that? And it's like, well, that's classic whataboutism. You know, what about this? What about that? Don't deflect. And just admit ability, admit something, and they don't. And so that's how you could almost tell they know they got fucking. And then, of course, the fact that she's like, you know, we're parents too. And you're like, okay, hey, listen, I don't want to judge, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I had a point. What was I going to add to that? I was going to add something to that.
Let me see what else I had in store, because that was that.
Yeah, go ahead. You'll jog my head. I'm trying to remember what that was.
Okay, I'm going down all my points and highlighting what I already said. I think I said that he couldn't buy alcohol, but he could buy the AR-15, getting out the handgun.
That's the point I was trying to get to. Like that's something I was honestly questioning a little bit myself, that I was thinking of, is I'm not opposed to an 18-year-old buying a gun, because that's when you're legally an adult. You're going out in the world, and especially with some areas, I don't have a problem with an 18-year-old that wants to defend themselves when they leave the house. Hell, that's one thing I want to make sure my daughter's able to do when she leaves the house at 18, and make sure she's able to. I know,
that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm sure we could craft something, dude, that but at the same time, I don't know. That's where believe me, I do not want to argue for, a ban on guns for, you know, anyone under the age of 21, but
a restriction on what types of guns you can get, perfectly fine with me. Like maybe saying, I'd have to look a little more into the capacities and stuff like that. I'm planning to talk to my uncle to have them learn a little more about stuff like that when I have more time, because, you know, being a truck driver, I'm not home that often. But I wouldn't. I wouldn't have a problem with age restriction on heavier guns, like a regular pistol and handgun and stuff that you can conceal carry for regular self-defense. I have no problem with. I have no problem with certain rifles that are used for hunting, because I mean, hell, if you're underage, you can go hunting with a rifle. Because usually you're supervised when you go that way too, so I have no problems with that. Yeah, that's true. At least in our state. Is that state? That nationwide or?
Don't know if it's nationwide, but I know at least in Colorado.
You live in Florida, right?
Yep.
Do they require hunter safety courses before you're allowed to go hunting?
That I don't know, because I've never gone hunting, and I have yet to get my. I actually went deer hunting once in Hawaii, but I don't even think that counts. The point is that
how the hell did they get deer to Hawaii?
Oh yeah, they do. They actually have like depending on what island you go to, and one of the ones that I went to, I think it was called Molokai, and I remember, yeah, the locals, the ones that were fucking there, the ones that were actually Hawaiian, and it was clear that they were Hawaiian. They always used to hunt for their food until fucking people started moving onto that island, you know, and that's where you do really, you could almost make the argument for a lot of these leftist causes, almost, you know what I mean? Like on that microcosm level, I could sort of see, because you do see the complete displacement of the original people on that island by rich people who are just like, hey man, we like this too and we want to live here. And now you know that I was like, and I was like back in like 2000 when I went there. And it was funny that entire island only had one street, and that one street only had one traffic light. That was it. That's how small town you could imagine this place. And I remember one of the guys that I don't want to mention his names, I don't want to embarrass him, but this is how sealed off from the world and from reality a lot of them are. The guy was hyper religious, and I remember the guy, you know, that was when I just turned atheist, and I was like hell bent on fucking telling everybody that there is no God and I can prove it and blah blah blah. And I remember this guy was like, well, man, if there's no God, who changes the traffic light? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he was like, yeah, man, if there's no God, who changes the traffic light? And I was like, you know, that's synchronized, right? I mean, it's not God changing. And I was like, holy shit, this guy thinks God changes the traffic lights.
I'm Christian myself, and that just made me want to kill myself.
I was like, holy shit. And you know who really did a number on them? It was the Jehovah's Witnesses, if I'm not mistaken. It was like a very strict brand of religious ideologues. Why can I fucking say that word? Ideologues that went over there. And they set up a mission, and they kind of fucking made things sort of worse for them, you know, to a certain degree. And so, yeah, and then when I told him that, like, no, man, those things are synchronized, dude. It's like, and he was like, wow, how do you know all these things? I was like, my God.
You should have taken the opportunity to be like, I am God.
I probably could have. And that's what a lot of these fucking people do. I mean, that's how, like, you know, because if there's one thing that a lot of people, when I put that thing out, like this one guy, I don't know if you know, Captain Copal, he made a video. And he was like, hey, I'm surprised you coming from a Cuban family and a dictatorship, you know what that is? And I'm like, yeah, those are the fine balances they're tricky. But I think already with what we know and what we've seen with so many school mass shootings, and there being AR-15s, and the fact that teenagers almost like, granted, they're of legal age, but they've flunked like once or twice, so they're still in high school. Like they're fucking sophomores when they should have been in college by now. One of those kids could fucking buy a gun, dude. And those are the things that we already know. And like the NRA, like I already read about it like recently when they were talking about the age restriction. They're like, oh, why do you want to take away a teenager's constitutional right? It's like, dude, it's not about fucking constitutional rights. This is about the fucking sales that all their manufacturers, the manufacturers that make that, because there's over 8 million fucking AR-15s alone in this country. And wow, ever since I made that video, I've discovered 4 more AR-15 owners. People who've just told me, I'm like, wow. And now I think I sort of see it's a big selling gun. And it's like, it seems to me like they almost want to not do whatever it takes to fucking ensure that those sales keep coming. It seems to me. I don't know. And I don't want to.
Like I do know that. I do know that usually after something like this, a lot of gun sales spike up. Like you got the common paranoid freak that thinks that they're immediately going to come take all the guns just because a mass shooting happened, and you got people that want to get the AR-15 because everybody's shouting to ban the AR-15 and they don't want to lose it before they can get one.
I think mostly. Sorry.
And that's okay. Yeah, you got those people that get a little paranoid. I do think they inhibit the problem a little bit, but one of the biggest things I think is a problem when stuff like this comes out and trying to determine policy is for the most part, I see as far as the government goes, it's always a battle of yes guns or no guns. And that doesn't solve anything. They don't look into other options to help with these problems. And that's one thing I do want to look into with the NRE is seeing how much they're inhibiting things like this, because like I said, I do believe in solid background checks and psych evaluations and strict training for people to first buy a firearm, and then making that stricter as the gun gets bigger.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, start with that, you know? And I think, I don't know, man. I mean, yeah, that's where I know my limits of how much shit I'm willing to talk. Because I was about to say, start trying to stop or somehow instruct at least the public or regulate the public in such a way where you curb the demand for these rapid fire military grade fucking assault rifles, you know? Because that's what they are. And it's like, and the other argument that, you know, I used to buy into this, and nowadays I'm like, I don't know. The whole idea that if and believe me, I'm not arguing for a repeal of the Second Amendment. Because I think if they did repeal the Second Amendment, that would be a bad sign. But if they banned AR-15s, they banned the sale and production of them. And then also heavily regulated so that manufacturers don't start getting coy and trying to make shit like it, you know, and then create a whole other thing. If you start putting that into effect, but of course, you know, people, it's hard. It's tricky. And those are the things that I know I'm not qualified to talk about because God knows how many other things go into it, but.
Yeah, that's kind of why I wish Magog could come in here because he is ex-military. He could give me on this, but like that's a Russian troll bot pointed out in the chat. Something I did forget to mention earlier is AR-15 actually isn't military grade. Like I know a few movies have claimed I recently watched Captain America's Civil War, and one of the military type villains at the beginning of the movie were all armed with AR-15s, but technically that's not a military grade weapon. They don't use those in the military.
No, right. But it was like pretty much, it was like the M16, if I'm not mistaken. It was like Armalite was commissioned by the military to come up with something. They had a couple of, I remember reading one article, of course, like all those little facts are hard to, if you don't commit them to memory. But anyway, they had like specific requirements that like we wanted to be able to shoot through fucking helmets. We wanted to be able to work under certain conditions. You know, it was like they were looking for more than just a handgun, you know? And so, I mean, right there, again, I don't know. It just seems to me like, yeah, it may not be military grade technically, but it's clearly intended to do some serious damage to as many people in as little bit of time as possible, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't hear. By the way, say hello. I say.
Yeah, you probably heard it. He's called. I'm with my brother right now. He's calling my other brother, who's in another town right now. See if he can jump in here. He knows a little more about guns than I do, but he didn't answer my call the first time. So.
And I'm an agnostic on this. I mean, whatever works, but I'm sure we've already seen there's other countries like Canada that allow guns for people to have guns, and yet they don't have this problem. And of course, they're very much stricter. I mean, now I'm only going by what a friend of mine told me over the phone just a little while ago. He was telling me how in Canada, if you're a gun owner, they basically check up on your record every day. You know, obviously they have like some sort of app or some sort of automation for each gun owner where if there's any domestic or reports of domestic disturbance or violence or anything like that, and you know it's you, they'll take away your guns. You know, and yet they'll give them back. Like if by any chance you're diagnosed as a depressive and you actually have to be out of work, they'll take away your guns, but they'll give them back once you're better. But of course, something like that, that's like, wow. But, you know, they have policies like that that I wonder if
they're better.
You were saying like better from like depressive episodes and domestic violence or something like that.
Yeah. So
go ahead and repeat what you were saying. My brother didn't hear you, and he was curious.
Oh shit! I wish I could rewind it because I kind of forgot already.
You said something about like a domestic violence and depressive.
Oh, that over in Canada, basically the gun laws they have there, because you know you could own guns in Canada, but they make them much more restricted and stuff like that. And yet they don't have the mass shooting incidents that we have, you know. And so I think it's something worth checking out. Anyway, the point is that in Canada, if you're a gun owner, they basically they supposedly are monitoring you every day, or at least they're monitoring your records. Like I'm sure that it's an app or a computer program that follows if you've been arrested or if a report of domestic violence has happened at your house or something like that. And then if something like that does happen, they take away your guns. And yet once you're either out of jail or you can prove you're back to normal or whatever, they're known for returning them supposedly. So.
Yeah, that's one thing I would agree that does not need to happen. Like, now depending on the crime, like I've said that if you use a gun to try and harm someone, whether you did or not, if you even attempted, like a robbery, for example, or pulling a gun on a spouse during a domestic dispute, you just waived your Second Amendment right. You individually don't get it no more. You're going to go serve your time, and then when you get back out, you're not allowed to purchase a firearm no more. I would agree to that, and I definitely would agree that you should not get your gun back after something like that, unless if you got arrested for something like that and you're found innocent. I have no problem with you getting your gun back, but if you were guilty of the crime, you shouldn't get it back after that.
Yeah, and this is when you start getting into the weeds of trying to, this is how I guess they probably craft policy, because that's why some of these laws end up being fucking pages long, because there's so many conditions and so many little things, and exceptions and this and that that you could put in there. But I think overall, I mean, here's what I would definitely love to see. Just definitely the age restriction, at least. Let's try that. Because I don't think a lot of people say, oh, but then you're taking away a teenager's right to defend themselves. I guess you can argue that, but are we having an epidemic of teenagers who are dying because they're not having guns by their side? Aside from these mass shootings that, if again, it goes in circles if you make that argument. But otherwise, aside from the mass shootings, is there any other incidences where, like there's an epidemic almost of teenagers in need of guns, but they don't have them? I don't think so. If anything, also just going to close with saying teenagers are more at risk by their own parents. I think sometimes, some of them, not all of them, of course.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like what I would say on the teenagers thing is, like, I have no problem with, especially from a reasonably early age, teaching your children gun safety and stuff like that. Like, there was this long tweet I saw earlier. I think it was made up because, like, you know those stupid things people would say, like how their kindergartner was telling Trump off during a speech about immigration or stuff like that, that you can tell is probably fake.
Okay.
I saw one earlier. It was somebody claiming that their 7-year-old heard about the Parkland shooting and went up to mommy crying, that asking if they had a gun in the house, and mommy saying, yeah, we have a gun. And the kid crying, can we get rid of it? And mommy saying, yeah, we took it to the police station. We got rid of it because the child's comfort is more important or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, one, that probably didn't happen. And what irritated me about that is I'm just like, you need to teach. This is the biggest thing that I also don't like the media doing either with gun crimes like this, is you should have taught the kid, and people need to realize the gun is a tool that is used in that type of way, yes, but it was a bad person using a gun. It wasn't a gun. And all that's going to do is scare the kid into being terrified of guns.
I mean, yeah.
And just to add to that last part, I also think that's part of the problem that I think that happens to a lot of people too, is these talks about focusing on the weapon used makes people scared of guns.
But you kind of have to look at that, though. I mean, when I hear people like, again, Ben Shapiro and oh my God, I'm going to repeat her again, that fucking cunt, and I'll say it like that even if she heard me, Laura Ingraham with her little fucking ashes on her head. By the way, for anybody who's like, oh my God, are you fucking from the left because you said about her? Dude, I cannot stand Rachel Maddow either. These are people, by the way, these are the people who are like, they are the agents of divide. I really want to make a video called that. And they really, I mean, it's almost like they probably think in terms of how can we be more partisan? How can I basically speak even more to my fucking target audience, you know, and how can we sell them shit ultimately? And I think yeah, man, it's kind of sickening to see what they do. Like how do they not see that? You know?
Yeah, exactly. That's what pisses me off about the media in general. Like, I'll explain this briefly now, but if you're curious a little more, I'll tell you a little more off stream. But my wife and I, we're on opposite political. We're on opposite sides of the political spectrum. Like, I'm more conservative. She calls herself a centrist, leaning more to the left, pretty much. But we've had disagreements on stuff like this, and honestly, one of the things I thought we should do, and she's agreed to it, we're actually starting Sunday, is we're going to have a monthly stream to discuss this. It's me, it's going to be her, it's this another YouTuber, Sir Conservatarian, that I'm friends with, and I'm trying to find one more person that leans a little more left to balance out my wife so we can have a proper discussion about things that happen in the government, because the media is focused on divide, because like a majority of the media outlets are very liberal, and not only that, like there's I don't think anybody really disagrees with that. We got all these liberal outlets. Then the only one that is to the right is Fox News. Both of them are biased to which side that they are, and that causes problems because if even Fox News is guilty of this, a lot of times they don't necessarily find people that disagree with them to have proper discussions on things like this that happen. They usually do somewhat of an echo chamber, and the most diverse one that I've seen is Tucker Carlson, who I'm actually a fan of on Fox News. And
no, I like him too.
Yeah, he's pretty good because he's I think he's actually more of a centrist, despite Fox News's right-leaning crap. Excuse me. And he often brings on people that he disagrees with to have discussions, and especially one of the funniest ones that he brings on sometimes is that chick Kathy Rue, who is the dumbest woman that I've ever seen him bring on his show. Well, actually second dumbest. First dumbest I'd say is I'm actually doing a video on her that I'm going to release next week, is a North Korean sympathizer. But I'm not going to get into that because I'll go on for another few hours on the subject.
I sometimes, man, I really wonder, why do people take those stands? Like they almost have to do it knowing that they're wrong, and they want to play the role of a villain. You know, they want to just aggravate and antagonize people, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
unless the entire world is being fed some sort of anti-North Korean propaganda, and it's really actually the best country in the world, and we've been lied to about everything. But dude, I see it even from CNN. Even CNN is like, they're evil. So when CNN, that's the good thing about some of these extreme to the left or to the right. They serve as a litmus test for when something's true. If they say fucking North Korea is evil, okay. Well, I get it.
Oh, good. We got the dork on here that's going to teach us a little more about guns.
Please school me.
But yeah, this is my brother. This is my brother John. We've said his name on here before, so.
How's it going, man? Nice to meet you.
John, you there?
Zach, what's been happening so far?
Can you hear us? Because you just completely ignored everything we just said.
It's being stupid. It's cutting in and out. I can't hear everything you're saying.
Are you on the computer?
Say what?
Are you on the computer?
Yes, I'm on the computer.
Are you using headphones?
It's being stupid right now.
Are you using headphones?
I have headphones in.
I can hear you clearly, by the way.
I can hear him. He can't hear us.
Oh, he can't hear us.
John, can you hear me?
I don't know why I can't hear you, but it keeps breaking up. You sound like a flipping robot.
Okay, John. Look, John. Check your phone. Check your text messages here in just a minute.
Oh, hurry up.
Can you hear me by any chance or no?
There's times I can hear both of you just fine, but there's times it cuts in and out.
Oh, I see. No, what I was going to say is more than anything, you know, because in a little while I'm going to have to get off, but I would love to see a solution to this. And I mean, I don't know if there would ever, I wonder if that's the tragedy about this all, if there will ever be a clear-cut solution to these mass shootings, or have we already crossed a threshold in gun ownership in this country that even if we were to ban the sale and manufacture of AR-15s from now on, and it becomes a fucking, that we'll just always be dealing with this if and as long as we all have guns, or the fact that just guns are out there, period, because even if you confiscated them, you would still have this problem. I mean, I don't know.
Like that's the thing I don't get about anti-gunners, especially because some of the ones that I've seen several that are all just outright ban guns. And to my knowledge, something I want to look into a little more is a lot of the countries that have done that, their crime rate goes up. And one of the biggest things I say is, I know it's a little bit of a conspiracy theory to think that the government will come take us over immediately as soon as they ban guns or something like that.
Yeah, I don't believe that anymore.
Yeah, like I know some countries have banned guns and they're fine right now, but my point is that it runs the risk, because if the government is the only one armed, they can decide whatever. Like I was trying, like, we've all heard of Riley Dennis. I saw her post something posted a simple tweet, ban all guns. And I commented on there, probably not going to get a response. She never responds. She just sits in her echo chamber. But I posted on there. I was like, okay, think about it in terms of this. You're terrified that Trump is this horrible anti-gay, anti-trans, whatever president that wants to put you all in concentration camps and kill all the gays or whatever. Now, now let's say, for sake of argument, we banned all guns, and let's say everything they said is 100% true. And if we banned all guns, what would be to stop them from doing that? Because I've said before, I don't necessarily, I've said before, like I've heard them say that their stance on LGBT people and stuff like that, and my thought is we have the First Amendment. You're allowed to think what you think about people like that, but I may not agree with it. And my thing is, it better not ever affect your job, because those people deserve the same rights as you, even if you don't agree with their lifestyle. And that's what I've said about that is hold the government to that standard. We have the power to overthrow the government and get people out of there if they step too far out of line. Like, for example, trying to confiscate our weapons, because you know what's going to come after that. And
something that a lot of people don't realize, and I'm sure you guys have thought of this, but like a lot of people, when they hear the words gun control, they immediately jump to the assumption that, oh no, the government's going to take our guns, and we don't want that to happen. That's what people jump to right away. Gun control is just like regulating them more, paying closer attention to who has them, kind of like what's being talked about earlier, like their mental state, like criminal background, like crap like that, watching the people to make sure that they're not going to go ballistic or whatever. And those who think they might or have in the past, don't give them guns. That's what it's about. It's not about we're going to take your guns because we don't want you to have them. That's not what it is. People just like to say that for sake of argument, and that they just like to argue about that. And
but you also got to realize, Zach, check him out. You also got to realize, Wes, that people jump to that conclusion that they're going to take away our guns because they talk about taking away a bunch of guns, leaving us with only bolt action and pump action guns.
Some have said that, yes, but majority of the people that are for gun control don't want to take away all but those or anything like that. They just want it to be more regulated, where an 18-year-old can't go get an automatic weapon and go shoot up a school. Well, they want to regulate it more. Like one of my managers at work just yesterday was saying she thinks that it would be a good idea to put it to where the age restriction on guns all across the board is 21. Maybe not specifically 21 per se, but have it like regulated all across the board, and have like certain other things like a psych evaluation, or like they already do the background checks and stuff. But
tell me an instance where changing the gun age to all over across the board to 21. You tell me an instance where somebody isn't going to go get a gun that somebody else owns and go shoot up a school. Nothing stopping them from doing that.
That still can't happen. I'm not saying that won't happen, but it won't be as easy for someone, because like they were mentioning earlier before you jumped on, what about a kid who's gotten held back in high school? He's still a sophomore, but he's 18. He could go get a gun, and if he wants to go get a gun and shoot up the school, he can do that. He's old enough to legally go buy one. Why is that okay?
That's kind of a touchy ground, because like what I said earlier, because I said that I'm honestly not going to oppose, like the bigger the gun, the older you have to be to get it. Like, even if it's just 21 to get, even if it's just like pistols and regular rifles, you can get at 18, and then
see, the problem with putting pistols where you can get them at 18 is pistols you can conceal way easier than the.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Pistols at 18, that's definitely a bad idea.
That's kind of a touchy thing though, because my thought earlier when I said that is like, I don't want to take away an 18-year-old's right to get a gun, because when you're 18, you're leaving the house, and like, let's say you're moving to a dangerous place, like let's say you were going to Chicago. Wouldn't you want the right to have some kind of weapon on you so that you could defend yourself? Because that's the city with the strictest gun control and the highest gun crimes in this country. Like, high enough that our gun crime rate, we actually go, like, we're one of the we're up the list in gun violence crimes. I'm not exactly sure where, but we actually go down at least 4 or 5 steps when you eliminate Chicago.
No, Dad was talking the other day. Me and Mom and Dad were talking about this. In gun-related crimes, we are ranked 4th out of all the states. But if you eliminate Chicago, Detroit, and all the major cities where it all happens, that drops us way the hell down to well below half.
Yeah, I know. I was saying if you eliminate Chicago specifically. I know we dropped down a couple states to begin with, but anyway, real quick, because we do have a guest. Nachi, what are your thoughts on what we've said so far?
Well, damn, there was quite a few of them that I wanted to get to. And shit, right now, I kind of forgot most of them. You guys are talking about something right now, though. What was the very last thing you guys were talking about?
We were mentioning like an age restriction because Wes mentioned that a coworker of his suggested raising the gun underage to 21, and I mentioned what I said earlier about not taking away an 18-year-old's right to defend themselves because that's when you're leaving the house, and if you're going to a dangerous place like Chicago.
Clarify, my coworker didn't mention like as just guns. She was thinking like everything all across the board, like joining the army, like whatever. She was wanting like it all at the same age instead of like you can buy a machete at 16. Sometimes a 4-year-old could come buy a machete sometimes from where I work, depending on which one they get. Like have all of those age restriction things all at the same age is what she was getting at. Anyway, sorry, continue.
No, now I remembered what I was going to say is like, I mean, I think you could also make certain exceptions. Like, let's say you live in a rural area and you're a 16-year-old kid who lives on a giant ranch that's riddled with bears. Okay, fine. Fucking, let the kid, and that's if he's living there by himself because he's a fucking orphan or some shit. But for the most part, the parents, I mean, I would think that it'd be legal that I, as a parent, buy a rifle, let's say, or a gun. I have it in my house. I've trained my kid. I have to leave. The kid stays home at night. And these have happened. These things have happened. Where somebody tries to break into the house and the kid shoots the intruders. I think that should be fine. I mean, the kid's basically defending his life. And I don't think you have to have, okay, the kid might not have been able to have bought the gun, but he had a parent that bought it. I mean, I think you should allow that, especially if it does happen. Those things. That's why I think that there's a way to have the right to bear arms and the ability to defend yourself, but also, man, just know, you're basically selling poison to society. It's a large degree. You're willingly or knowingly selling some sort of poison to society.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. What were you gonna say though? John, what would you have to add?
Add to what?
Actually, John, give some a second. But anyway, John, let me ask you a question real quick because you know more about this than I do. How much do you know about AR-15s on like how they shoot and what calibers and shit like that?
AR-15 is 7. No. Wait. A AR-15 is 5.56.
It's what?
It's a 5.56. I think it's a smaller round than the AK-47, which the AK-47 is a 7.62 by 39.
So what is that, like comparable to a 45 or a 40 or a...
They have more power and they go faster.
Right. And let me ask you this. Could you do more damage with a Glock 45 than you could with an AR-15 or the other way around?
It all depends on what you're shooting out of the gun. It really does.
Okay.
Elaborate on that.
Meaning, if somebody goes and they shoot somebody with a Glock 19, like you said, but they have full metal jackets in there, okay, it's just gonna go straight in, straight out. Leave basically one trail of where it went. If you're shooting, same with the AR-15, if you're shooting a full metal jacket out of it, which is just a straight lead bullet. Now, if you're shooting either caliber with a hollow point in there, the second that hollow point hits the skin, it's going to expand out and cause way more damage going through.
Can you get both those types of bullets for both guns?
Yeah. I mean, now the AR-15, the AR-15, I don't know how easily you can get those. I'm not 100% sure how easily you can get the hollow points for them. But I know for like the Glock 19, you can get them fairly easy. And also on that note, you can also, I think you can probably get them fairly easy for the AR too, because you can use that for hunting.
But you went way over the limit.
I know. I'm gonna fix.
How many? Let me ask you this: how many shots or how many bullets can you fire with an AR-15 in 1 minute, and how many bullets could you fire with a Glock 45 in 1 minute?
That all depends on the shooter.
Well, like pretend you have those guns, John. How could you do it?
Well, it really depends on the shooter and if you have any upgrades on the AR-15 versus the Glock.
Well, let's say you have the same shooter using both different guns, and the shooter is trying to get the maximum amount. Is he going to get the same from both of them, or I'm sure he's going to get a lot more shots out of the AR-15?
He can probably get more shots out of the AR-15 just because in some states you can have the 30-round magazine instead of the 10-round. But also on that note, you can also have the bigger magazines for the Glock.
But what's the maximum magazine that you could have on a Glock? Maximum clip?
15? It all depends on, I think maybe a 15, unless you go out and look harder. You can probably find extended mags that are like 30 rounds.
For a Glock 45?
Yeah.
And so and the maximum that you can put into an AR-15 is what, 30 rounds? That's the max?
There's either 30 rounds or they make a variety of magazines for them. You can have either a 10 round, you can have a 30, or I've seen them where you can have like 75.
Do you not see there? Like that's when you start getting into, this is beyond self-defense. This is how many people can we fucking mow down? That's what that machine is for, dude. I don't know. It seems to me like something like that, man. There's you need to have the regulations on that.
Yeah, like I'm not going to necessarily say you should regulate ban those types of magazines either, but I would agree that even with those, you have to have much stricter training before you're legally allowed to have one, because
I know with like the 75 rounds, the only people that can get it are people that are in the military.
Right. Right. So that's what I kind of meant by military grade rifle.
That's like the bigger magazines.
But the AR-15 that, like, I could go out and buy an AR-15 right now, and it is way different than a military grade one. Military grade one is way more high tech and built to actually shoot fast, a lot faster than the one I could go out and buy from the store now.
Oh, so they do use AR-15s in the military. They're just much higher capacity and stuff like that.
They're more high tech than the ones I can go out and buy.
Okay, so like, what can you buy? Like for example, we know that the Parkland shooter got his gun legally, and I use that term very loosely because he should not have been able to get that gun based on what the authorities knew about him. But that aside, he got that gun quote unquote legally. So what type of gun? How would that AR-15 be like?
You wouldn't have any special attachments on it. Like, you wouldn't have a laser sight, you wouldn't have a scope, unless you bought those yourself. And also, you wouldn't, depending on what state it's in, you won't have a 30-round magazine. You'll only have a 10-round. That's all. Some states that's the max you can have is 10.
And I'm not sure. I'm not sure what size mag he had in that gun. I haven't seen any info on the weapon aside from that it was an AR-15. But anyway, real quick, Nachi, you said you had to go around the hour. Are you still good to straight for a little bit longer, or do you need to go?
Well, I would kind of need to go in a little bit, but what I was going to say as far as that, yeah, that's where it gets tricky, because like right now, I was even thinking of somebody saying, "Oh, you can only have 10 round clips," and my initial reaction was, "Why? Why only 10 rounds? Who are you to fucking tell me that?" And then I realized, well, it's weird. Like I'm actually sort of arguing for those limits, and that's the very tricky thing I think about all this political talk and why Trump became president and blah blah blah. Politics, nobody wants to deal with it, but it is kind of necessary, and yet it's not that simple, and yet it is. Like a lot of these things, like, you know, I always say, like, one of the cures for poverty is don't have so many fucking children. Just begin with that. Just don't have so many fucking kids, and much less when you're a teenager. That really is the solution. That's how simple it is. And yet, man, trying to get that out to people, trying to get people to understand that, and, you know, to realize, yes, sex is fun, but watch out with the kids. Wow, it's so difficult. And then trying to find those fine balances in between, you know. And so I kind of see it with this. But I'm glad to see that I was going to, you know, if I was going to sign off on saying anything, I'm glad to see that you all seem to have some sort of, acceptance or openness to some more regulations, you know, especially when you start getting into the nitty gritty, you know, because clearly it's not about banning. It's not about, and by the way, that's another thing as far as a revolution or a takeover of the government. For anybody who's worried about that, I would say you should be more worried about the next mass shooting than the next fucking government takeover. Or government.
The only time I think you have to worry about a government takeover is when they explicitly say, "We're coming for your guns."
Maybe. I mean, I would, if all of a sudden and in a very quick fashion, they were like, "Look, we need to do away with the Second Amendment." I would be like, "Okay, something's up here. Something's wrong." And especially if they're just going for that one. No more Second Amendment. You know, that's it. It's over. It's just that one. I mean, okay, something's wrong. But we have statistically, the chances of that happening like anytime soon are very nil, almost 0 to none. Whereas the chances of the next mass shooting, I don't want to, you know, obviously in any way, shape, or form, but fuck it. I almost feel like, yeah, it probably will happen before the end of the year. There'll be another one of these.
Well, yeah, so that freaking 8 months.
Yeah, like he said, we got 8 months of the year left over. But yeah, I do agree with you. Like, I don't want one to happen, but that's also why I believed in having this conversation, because I don't think it's as simple as banning something and saying that it's all going to go away, because that's
that's true. I agree.
So I believe the best thing that our politicians can do for us and what we can do for the country is discuss how we can take care of this if it happens. We always need to talk about the if it happens and not just the attempts at stopping it that never work.
No, for sure. And I think it's some regulations that they're going to have to put in there. You know. And by the way, what do you guys think also? And I like having these conversations. That's why I'm like, I have to go, but I just want to throw this in there. When you see Ben Shapiro, because I like Ben Shapiro, and yet at the same time, I see him give those commercials like for this, like where they're kind of stoking fears. Like, so I know you want to protect your family, and you know you might have to kill somebody, you know. And of course, I am beyond paraphrasing. And but our friends over at Legal Scholar, they'll take care of all. And so it's not only that they're trying to get you to buy guns, they're trying to get you to buy the legal defense. So when you do use the gun, you know what I'm saying? Like it's almost as if they're pushing some of this shit. And then when I see Ben Shapiro so fervently defend AR-15s and so quickly start ridiculing the actual teenagers and shit like that, and how many of them did. I'm just like, you people go fuck yourselves. Like, when Ben Shapiro says, they don't have a right, fuck you. They have every right to say whatever they wanted to say, as misguided as it may be. And when they say you're either with us or against us, those ultimatums never work. But I would not fault those kids, man.
I agree. Like, I mean, hell, one of my most recent videos, if you thought it was the one with Brian with opinions, but we were talking about Riley Dennis trying to basically.
The thing is, I avoid anything with that guy Riley Dennis. Dude, so.
She was trying to say we don't have the First Amendment right to make response videos, and I'm arguing against that. And I even say in the video, like, as much as I hate what Riley Dennis says, I will defend to the death the right to say it.
Right, the right, yeah.
And like addressing your point on Ben Shapiro, though, I like Ben Shapiro. I like a lot of his talking points. I don't agree with everything he says, but I like hearing him talk because he's very well thought out and he's thought very well and researched very well his opinions. And I do agree with you to an extent that he is kind of fear-mongering when he talks about stuff like this, to the extent that he does. The only thing I would argue is, like, I think he does need to do that to an extent, just not the extent that he goes to, because people do need to understand the reality of what could happen just in your own homes and the fact that you need to prepare to defend yourself. Because, like, that's one thing I argue against a lot of social justice topics on, is this idea, like, for example, teach men not to rape. It's one of those things. You're never going to stop it. You gotta try to reduce it as much as humanly possible, but you're never going to stop it all. You're not going to stop rapes. You're not going to stop mass shootings. You're not going to stop crime in general. You got to try to prevent it as much as you can, but you got to understand that you need to be prepared to defend yourself, because you can never stop it and you can never guarantee that it won't happen to you.
No, granted. I just think that sometimes, though, they really, like, for example, the other day when I read about Ben Shapiro, they made it seem like he's going to be buying the Blaze, from Glenn Beck. But it's not him buying the Blaze. If I'm not mistaken, the Daily Wire, which is owned by the Mercers, they may be buying the Blaze. And so then when you really start to follow the money trail and you see the people like, Ben Shapiro, I'm not saying he's a total puppet for the Mercers, but I'm sure he's not going to take any stands and much less carry. He might take one stand once in a while to show some fucking integrity against Mercer, but I'm pretty sure anything that might affect him, he's not going to fucking rile against it. But then again, I get the feeling.
Hey, give or take what the subject is, because I've seen him once post an article from the Daily Wire, and he even titled it saying, "Proof that the Daily Wire does produce articles that I do not agree with." I don't remember what it was on, but anyway. John, do you have any final thoughts on this?
Well, at least
just anything that we've discussed since you got on. And if you're going to talk about this a little longer, I'll go a little longer after Nachi leaves.
Backtracking a little bit here. When we were talking about when Ignacio was asking me, well, how quickly could you pull out, how many rounds could you pull off in a minute? Backtracking to that all depends on whether you're going for accuracy or if you're going for the max amount you can get out. If you're going for accuracy, you're going to get less out than if you're going, because you're going to have it mounted on your shoulder, aiming down the sights, getting your sight perfect, breathing properly, and slightly squeezing the trigger, ready to go. When you're ready to shoot. If you're shooting to get as many out as you possibly can and as quickly as you possibly can, you're going to just drop it down to your hip and you're just going to squeeze that trigger as many times as you can.
Right, and at that point, you'd be what? Would you be able to get out 100 shots if you had a 100-round clip in a minute?
If you had a 100-round clip, there is a possibility, like I said again, depending on the shooter. But like I said before, you can only get the higher, like the 75-round magazines or whatever, like I said, if you are enrolled in the military, like active in the military. I couldn't go out and get a 75-round magazine right now.
Let me go ahead and throw in real quick.
I could.
Right.
Anyway, John, let me go ahead and throw in here before Nachi leaves. if you're willing to schedule with me, I'm sure John would love to come on and have a longer discussion when you have a little more time about this.
Oh, about what?
Like on this subject, guns in general.
Yeah. Let me see, man. Let me see when I finish up with that mural, and we could try to see if we could do that. I mean, I also know the limits to what I can contribute to a constructive conversation. I mean, I thought the least the constructive nature of this conversation was getting a barometer, a feel for what other people think about this. And it looks like on a national level, a lot of people are starting to realize, I think, yeah, we're going to need a little bit more gun regulation. We might have to raise the age limit, might have to do a little more thorough background check beyond criminal records, you know. And they might also have to consider a certain, yeah, man, I don't know. I don't want to end up using the word ban, but on the manufacture of some of these high capacity, rapid fire guns. I don't know. But that's where I'm already past my paycheck.
Great.
Or above my pay grade.
But yeah, I think that's a good spot to leave it off so that you can check yourself out. John, you want to go for a little bit longer? Your choice.
That's fine. I'm awake now.
All right. Well, Nachi, if you're ready to go ahead, shout yourself out to my subscribers in case they haven't seen your stuff before, and then I'll bid you farewell. And
sure, man. Nachi. Yeah, I never know how to plug myself on these things. I would just say check me out at Nachi Free on YouTube, and yeah, it'd be nice if I could finally get 1,000 subscribers. Shit, I already missed the February 20th mark, but oh well. And another, man, it was nice meeting you guys. Thanks for having me on, and we'll be talking again, man.
Yeah, not a problem. I'll chat with you again. I'll hit you up on Twitter because I actually got another question I wanted to ask you that I'll ask you off air.
All right, cool, bro. We'll talk to you, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on.
Later, man. Later,
Bench. See ya.
Anyway, John, well, okay, I don't want to sit here and have to type all this nonsense out. Russian troll, what's your face? I was not saying anything about Congress needing to have control over whatever I don't know what the hell you're going off on, but my point about needing a psych evaluation before getting a gun, that has nothing to do with Congress, the government, or whatever. I don't know where you got that from. I was just saying that in addition to the background checks that they already do, a psych evaluation needs to be done.
I don't think.
Stop. Hold on. Where I work, people go, they pay for their background check. It gets run and comes back with a yes or a no, whether this person can buy a gun for reasons 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what happens with that. They just need to add the psych evaluation portion to it. Yeah, it's kind of an annoying extra step, but if someone really wants or needs a gun that bad, they would be able, like, they could suffer through a few extra steps to get what they want or need, is what I'm getting at. That really, like, okay, yeah, I do get that that does need to go through Congress, but if it passed, if that more regulations and having to do the psych evaluation did pass or whatever, that would be where it ends really in the Congress side of it. After that, you would do just like you do now. You would go sit down with a psychologist and they would ask you this list of questions and what does this look like? Yeah. They would ask you your list of questions and and if they feel like, okay, due to these few responses, like, and it wouldn't be just like, oh, they said this one weird funny, so I want to look into one more about this. It would be like, oh, out of these 50 questions, they answered 15 of these in kind of a weird way, like maybe it was how they said it or just their answer in general. So we need to look more at this person a little bit to see, like, screen them a little bit deeper to see what's going on there or anything. That's kind of what I'm getting at with that. I wasn't like, you are right, that would need to get, like, passed through Congress, that people would have to go through that. But that doesn't mean that Congress would be able to regulate it or like control it and just be like you were saying that, oh, Trump supporters, and that's a mental illness, you don't get to buy guns now. Like they wouldn't be like, because there's, even if it sounds like they'd be able to just because they're the government and they usually try to do whatever the fuck they want, they wouldn't be able to. There's way more structure in the psychological community than people really know.
You could probably go on for like another hour about that, but I see what you're getting at, because we would not allow Congress enough power to be like Trump supporters are mentally ill or whatever.
Yeah. I'm reading the message there.
See, I see what Wes is getting at here.
There are loopholes. There's loopholes with anything. One good thing about psychologists, though, is we're really good at finding loopholes. So that means we can find them and cover them up too a little bit better. Just bragging on us here, but that is a good point. There are going to be loopholes no matter what. It can sort of be applied unfairly. Yeah, they may screen someone, say, no, sorry, you're not fit to have a gun or whatever. But they can go to someone like, say, my brother, hey, dude, Mr. Person here.
I said my name on
comes to me. Oh, you have? Yeah. Okay, I didn't know. Anyway. So say he came to me, and I'm a psychologist. I evaluate him, and I say he acts like he might have, I don't know, symptoms of schizophrenia or something like that. And I say, okay, I don't think you should be allowed to buy a gun because you have these symptoms. Okay. He could go, if he wanted to, and argue it, because I know, again, back to where I work, whenever they do background checks on guns, there have been several times, even one of my coworkers went back to buy a gun from there. And because of something with his proof of Colorado residency, it denied him and said he couldn't buy the gun, even though he had already paid for it and stuff like that. He lives here. He has an address here in Colorado. So he was able to go and sort of kind of go through a process to not really get around that, but to kind of refute that. He had to submit a couple other proof of residency type things, I think, whatever. So kind of people can do that. He would be able to go to another psychologist and say, hey, I want a second opinion on this. Of course, they would probably have to cap that and say, after, I don't know, for example, 5 psychologists say you're not fit to buy a gun. Dude, obviously you're not fit to buy a gun. But if you go to one, they say no, sure, you can try to go to another one and say, hey, I want a second opinion on this. What do you think? I think they could do that too, just to kind of even out how unfair it could get. Because obviously there's going to be those psychologists who are, in my opinion, it's really bad psychology practice whenever people do this, but obviously someone's always going to have a little bit of their own biases and stuff like that thrown into their diagnosis or whatever, or impersonation of someone. I can admit that I've let my personal biases and stuff like that get in the way of stuff that's going on, at work or whatever. I've let that happen. I shouldn't let that happen, and I'm working on that. But obviously that's going to happen if someone would go in to get a psych evaluation for a gun. Say the psychologist doesn't believe anyone should really have guns. Then, of course, they're going to try to turn someone down. So, of course, that person should get a chance to go to someone else and get a second opinion.
See,
I feel like I'm rambling.
You are rambling. I agree somewhat with what you're saying, Wes. I don't think you need to go as far as a psych evaluation just yet, per se. I say you need to do a more in-depth background check before somebody gets a gun.
Oh, say that again.
I said they need to do a more in-depth background check before we go as far as a psych evaluation, because you know as good and well as I do that somebody's going to word something, the way they word something is going to come across completely different than what they mean.
True, and like I was saying, I understand that. That's why I was saying that you should be allowed to go to a different psychologist a few more times to see. Obviously, well, I guess if you want to pay to go get 300 different psych evaluations from 300 different psychologists, and you have the money to do that, by all means, go ahead. More money for us. But with background checks now, as far as I know, I don't know exactly how they work, but I've heard from the people back in that department from where I work, it's kind of like, okay, they do just kind of like a quick general sort of almost background check. And if there's a couple red flags that pop up, it'll delay it a little bit. They go look into that. And if, like, I'm sure if there's like criminal offenses or something that's on their record that would cause a problem with them having a gun, or like say they had their gun rights taken away, stuff, well, one, that would probably shut them down right away. It wouldn't even have to search deeper. But say a couple red flags show up and then where they need to look into it more, they already kind of do that. It would take a lot more time, effort, and money for them to do that deep of a background check on everybody. So that's why I kind of like the idea of the psych evaluation. Another reason why I was saying that, because you weren't here whenever I mentioned that earlier. A lot of like the psychopathic tendencies and stuff like that, like schizophrenia, psychopathic tendencies, like those kind of more hostile sort of mental illnesses and stuff, a lot of those can be caught early on. They're actually, they've been working on some research. It hasn't been proven yet, like schizophrenia. They're starting to find that it may be hereditary. So maybe these two parents, maybe they hold some sort of genetic gene or something like that makes their kids have schizophrenia. They actually, there was a documentary that we watched in one of my classes where, I don't remember the name of the family, but the parents were just fine. I think they had 2 kids, both of which had schizophrenia. So like things like that, they can pick up on, like even back when a kid's really, really young, they can pick up on that kind of stuff. So doing a psych evaluation would sort of ward off people with those tendencies that have the potential to go psycho and crazy and stuff. They'd be able to see that, catch that, and be like, okay, maybe you shouldn't have a gun. And it's the patient's information and stuff like that. We could divulge and say, okay, here are the reasons why we don't think you should have a gun. And again, that's where someone could go and try to get a second opinion.
Oh, let me ask a curious question. This is mostly for you when you're done reading. But anyway, just out of curiosity, now I have nothing against peaceful Muslims, but in the case of like a Muslim extremist, do you heard about anything that goes into what makes them extremists, and if there's a way to catch shit like that? Because I know the guy that shot up the gay club in Florida, I think he had done it in the name of ISIS.
No, that was just oh, are you talking about the school?
No, the Orlando shooter, the guy that shot 50. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one. Actually, kind of knew a few of the people that got killed there. But anyway, yeah, it's like I knew their names. That's about it. But it's still like I knew them and their face. So whenever I saw their face on all the pages of the people who got killed, I was like, oh damn. But anyway, like that, I don't think he did it in the name of ISIS. He may have claimed that, but all in all, that was just straight up a hate crime. He didn't like the gays, and he wanted to let them know that, so he did that.
Okay, well, let's put that personal event aside, but let's put that personal event aside, honestly. But let's still suggest like Muslim extremists, because I do know the San Bernardino ones were that way, but like I'm just curious as to if there's like psychology that goes in behind how they become extremists, and if there's a way to scan for that stuff. Because
not really, because like I'm sure like I guess you could kind of just like straight up ask the person, like have them do a questionnaire or something like that, whatever. But that kind of gets in, like, because you have the extremist Christians and extremist atheists and extremist Satanists or whatever. Like, every religion has their extremists. You can't really, like, screen people for that. If they want to tell you, that that's how extreme they are on their beliefs, one, fine by them, they can believe whatever the hell they want, however hard they want. But they can tell you that, but you can't really screen for something like that. Because that's kind of just like, that's most definitely a person by person basis. If I really wanted to, I could become, if I wanted to, I could become the most devout Muslim ever if I really felt like it. But, and everybody kind of has that potential to follow their beliefs so strictly and so extremely that they could go and, I don't know, if they wanted to do whatever in the name of ISIS or whatever the hell, that's it, which ISIS really isn't part, like, it's not necessarily part of the Muslim religion. Muslim religion is its own thing. ISIS, yeah, a lot of people in the ISIS thing are Muslim, but that's like over here. It's not the same thing as being Muslim.
Well, yeah, I know that.
Just because they're Muslim doesn't mean they have anything to do with ISIS. One of my friends at work, her cousins, white as could be, but they follow the Muslim religion. And that doesn't mean they have ties to ISIS or anything like that. And if they did, I'm sure my friend would know because her dad is in the Navy and has access to information and crap. So
I know that because, like, I know that Islam is basically essentially similar to Christianity, because I've heard peaceful Muslims that have gotten on YouTube and Twitter and even Fox News a few times and have said basically ISIS to them is the Westboro Baptist Church to Christians.
Exactly. Yeah, I've heard that too. Exactly. Oh, God, I hate them.
I'm pretty sure everybody.
Okay.
Sure
How do we get on the topic from guns to Muslims?
He was asking if there was a way to screen for, like, the extremists in religions and stuff like that. And he's Russian person again is saying, look at the Muslim version of the Ten Commandments and then get back to me. Last I checked, I did take a like a religions and mythology course, and we did get into stuff like that quite a bit. Honestly, most all across the board, for the most part, all religions have the same, like, they may not call them the 10 Commandments or whatever, but they have the same kind of general guidelines, like don't kill people, don't steal, crap like that. That's pretty universal all across the board. I haven't specifically read the Muslim version. Personally, I don't like reading through and, like, going off of the different versions or modern versions of these religious texts and stuff like that. Even the Bible, I do consider myself Christian, but I don't read the Bible just because of how many times through the past it has been manipulated and changed and stuff like that, just to fit someone's whatever, like different version. Back, I don't remember the time period, but I know there was a point over in Europe or something like that. King of England or something like that. Didn't like the religion of the national religion or whatever, because it didn't allow him to get a divorce, and he wanted to get a divorce from his wife. So he made pretty much the exact same religion, but he was allowed to get a divorce, made it his own thing.
I've heard about that too. And like, one of the last things I'll say though is, like, I've even heard a Muslim kid get on and say this during there's a talk at a college campus, but the Quran, there's no escaping it. It is filled with some evil shit. I mean, the Bible is too, but I mean, like, for example, the Quran actually, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to buy one and read through it myself.
I was gonna say, have you read it yourself? You can't just go off of what other people say here and there. Obviously, if they have it backed up by, like, article facts and research and shit like that, sure, yeah, fine. But not everything can really be a reliable sort of, like, even if it is a Muslim kid or something like that. Maybe they personally just find it terrifying or whatever. One of my good friends, she was dating a guy who he said he was Muslim, but he was raised in a household where I think it was his mother was Christian and his dad was Muslim. And like they basically take turns taking him to whichever place they went to worship and stuff like that, because they wanted him to have the freedom to choose whichever religion fit him best, which one he wanted to follow. So he had pretty in-depth studying of both the Quran and the Bible throughout his childhood. For the most part, they're a lot alike. Obviously, stories and stuff like that in them are going to be different, but in general, the same kind of guidelines, like don't kill, don't do this, is more or less the same.
Honestly, I'll go ahead and put this out there. I know I'm small right now, but I'll go ahead and put this out there. If anybody sees this and anybody worships the Muslim religion or knows somebody that does, and that person is willing to come and have a discussion about it, please send them to my Twitter at hey_dude77. And because I would love to have a chat with somebody like that. But anyway, let's get back to the guns thing. If there's anything to bring up. John, you sound like you've been holding back some thoughts with it. What else were you gonna say?
I'm just wondering why we got from the topic of guns to Muslims here, but
I told you that he asked about. I was talking about psych evaluations.
You said I asked how.
And then
now I'm wondering why.
It happened.
I know how. You explained how. I was here. I know how. Why did it happen?
From guns to religion to how. So let's go back to guns.
Okay. Okay, peace out, Russian Trollbot dude. Nice talking with you.
Yeah, thank you all for coming by. But anyway, John, is there any more thoughts you want to bring up, or you want to call it good now?
Oh, depends. Do you have any more questions that I might possibly be able to answer?
At the moment, no. But like Nachi said, if he wants to have a discussion at a later time about this, again, I'm all for it. But
let me know.
Other than that, the only thing I honestly might say is the only thing I might lastly say is if you want to come under the Trump stream that we're doing on Sunday, I think I'm gonna double check the time with Conservatarian, but if you want to come back to that one, please feel free to come on and you might be able to talk about this a little more because we are going to bring that up.
Well, a couple more things here. I was on Instagram the other day. I saw this post from this, I forget what the page is called, but they posted, it was this picture it was a divided picture and it said gun-free zone and this place is armed or whatever. I forget exactly what it said, but it was like, okay, which one do you think would stop more shootings? Honestly, when me, mom, and dad were talking about this the other day, we all agreed that one, yes, they need to start doing deeper background checks, and they need to, what was it? Have just a little bit more restrictions than what they do. I agree with that.
I agree with sort of what my manager was saying, or one of the managers was saying about, she thought that they should put, like I was saying, the age limit of stuff, but like, she said 21. I don't know, I feel like 21 is a little too old, but I feel like 18 is too young. But like, unless we want to put all that stuff at the same level, that would regulate it a little bit more because, like, what's his face was saying earlier, about how, like, I shared his example also earlier about the high school students get held back 18. They can go buy a gun and go shoot up their school.
Okay, what happens if they get held back enough to where they're 21 and in high school? They can still
a lot of states, no, honestly, a lot of states have a cap on how old they're allowed to be and still be in school. One, chances are if someone's 21 and still a high school level education, they've probably dropped out. They'll accuse you.
Probably.
A lot of states have a cap on how old you can be. Like, I think, and it may have changed, but I think at one point Colorado had a age cap of 20. Like, if you were 20 years old, you weren't allowed to attend high school anymore. If you wanted to finish and get that equivalent, you had to go get your GED or do one of the adult high school things. You wouldn't be allowed to go to a regular high school where they have all those younger kids.
The question I would have,
but
okay,
pause. What's to stop somebody? Okay, they change it to where everything's 21. You can only get like the rifles, shotguns, pistols, everything at 21. Okay. If somebody wants to go shoot up a school, one, what's going to stop them from grabbing somebody else's gun, their parents' gun, a friend's gun, or something like that, and doing it? And two, what's going to stop them from turning 21, going and buying a gun, and going and shooting it up anyway?
I think that's true, and that is a good point. But that's again where something like the psychological evaluation would have to come in and come into play, and because something like that is something that could be checked for. One, it also adding the psych evaluation into that stop your dog.
Hey, go lay down.
It makes it a little bit longer of a process, because like sometime today, like if I wanted to tomorrow, if I had them, I could go and in the same day walk out of a store with a gun. The psych evaluation would make it a little bit longer of a process, which one does like, and this is not me like supporting criminals like that in any way, but if they decide, yes, I'm going to go shoot up this school, and then they go through the effort of doing background check, psych evaluation, one usually, depending on the psychologist and stuff like that, most would be able to pick up on something like that, because I'm sure if they did require the evaluation, there would be extensive questions on why the person is getting a gun.
And the thing I would honestly say that needs to be acknowledged in the gun debate to begin with is, like I said earlier, part of the reason that the media keeps doing this is because it's left versus right. Left saying no guns, right saying all guns. And I'm saying that specifically with media and Congress.
They're skewing it. Like, honestly, I'm pretty sure Congress wants the political divide that we have.
Oh, yeah, I believe it too.
Because every issue that comes up, especially in the media too, because the media, they get a lot of business based off of this political divide. Whether the media outlet is far right, far left, in between, unicorn, whatever. They get a lot of money based off of this political divide.
I wonder if the faggot that runs Canada counts as unicorn.
The what?
I wonder if the... Sorry.
That's why I moved it here to shoot you up.
The idiot that... I was wondering if the idiot... He's such a putz. I can go with him later, but... But no, what I was saying though is like, what needs to be acknowledged is the fact that no regulation ever is going to stop gun crime. We can do some stuff to reduce it, but we need to not just count on the law to reduce it. We need to count on people to reduce it.
Exactly.
And that's another problem that we run into is a lot of people, they're like, oh, this thing needs to be fixed, but I don't want to be the one who has to do something to do it. Like the whole, like, kind of like an example of Zach was using earlier, like with rape. Obviously, that's something that needs to be halted as to the best we can. Obviously, it's never going to 100% stop, but we can greatly reduce it. But a lot of people don't want to be the one to take the steps, because honestly, a big part of what needs to be done to reduce that kind of thing is not telling girls that they need to dress differently or anything like that. It's talking to the men and teach them not to basically over-sexualize women.
To an extent, that's true. Just as long as you don't go to the extreme of, because the friends.
Don't make it to the point where a guy's not going to get off because of a girl or something like that. Don't like drive it into their freaking skull that they can't get with a girl. But they basically need to be taught more respect, and they need to realize, like, start accepting the fact that no means no.
Well, yeah, I put it this way. I agree with that because, like, one thing that I've responded to several feminist videos, and one of the only things that I've agreed with that they complain about that men do is unwanted dick pics, and that's an example of where they need to, where there is a problem of no needs. It needs to be understood that no means no. However, the extreme that I'm talking about, you both know the friend of which I was arguing about that I'm not going to say the name of because we're on a stream and live, but I've argued with a certain friend of Wes's that thinks that we should just teach boys not to rape. That's the extreme that I don't think people should go to, because that's another example of not wanting to take the steps, because that's women that don't want to take the steps to defend themselves, and they act like the self-defense.
That's not necessarily it, because like biologically, men are built bigger, heavier, stronger than women. It is very easy for a man to come along and overpower a woman.
Yeah, no, that's why.
But if a woman is trained right,
specifically, that's why.
If a woman is trained, Zach, shut your mouth.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, men are built bigger, stronger, and they can overpower a woman. But if a woman has the right training, she can kick the shit out of the guy. I know several girls
Stop her.
that in no way, shape, or form would I try to pick a fight with.
Actually,
not saying I try to pick a fight with women, because I would never hit a woman, but I know several girls that if confronted by a guy who tries to do anything to her, they can defend themselves and they can get the hell away. And they can overpower a man.
It's true. There are a lot of girls that can do that.
And also...
but there's also a lot of girls that just have a physical disadvantage. There's a girl in one of my classes this semester. She is 4'5". Skinny as a rail. She's turned sideways, stuck out her tongue. She looked like a zipper.
Okay. At that point,
and she even goes and like works out, goes to the gym. She's talked about these martial arts and self-defense classes she's taken and stuff like that. It doesn't do a lick of good, because she is so tiny.
Okay, she may be tiny, but I guarantee you, she kicks the guy's trying to rape her. She kicked the guy in the balls. He's gonna be on the ground in pain. She can run the hell away.
One thing I will specify on... Grab her, damn it. So, knock it off. Lay down.
Sorry, we got a pesky dog to take care of.
Yeah, I can hear that.
But anyway,
back. I saw a story the other day of this. I think it was on another video. I forget who did it. Okay. But they were talking about this college girl who went through all the steps, had her concealed carry, had a gun that she concealed.
You mean him?
She was in college, and because the college was a gun-free zone and she was a law-abiding citizen, she did not take a gun.
Yeah.
She was assaulted next to her car.
Probably John Bud.
Are you even listening?
Yeah, we're listening. Keep going.
I was just wondering how many people are actually here paying attention and stuff. Hi.
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 Anyway, she was assaulted by her car in the college parking lot.
I was like, how could her car assault her?
And then a few days later, the same guy that assaulted her raped and killed, I think, another woman. The girl that was attacked first went on to say that if she was permitted to carry a gun on the premises, because she went through all the legal steps to be able to conceal carry legally, that guy wouldn't have done anything to anybody else, because she would have shot him.
Gun out and stuff.
See, for like smaller girls, like what you're saying, 4'5", like one of my friends.
Clean that up and take her outside.
Okay, yeah, they may be small and might not be able to overpower a guy, but they can always go through and get a concealed carry when they're 21. and stop the guy. They can always kick the guy in the balls. There is steps to take for a girl to be able to defend herself. It's not, and also, it's not necessarily always the guy. There is times where girls rape. So.
Oh yeah, we true. And I'm not. Just men raping women is usually just the most common example. And yes, having a concealed carry is one way to reduce that. I'm not denying that. I think that concealed carry is actually a really, really good thing. But basically, like, honestly, I do think there needs to be something to try to teach men, essentially, not to rape. Men and women, kind of everyone. They just kind of like rape prevention classes, like how to avoid that situation and how not to do it.
I think it's basically a psychological thing, because I do know that a lot of rape crimes happen because it's not a sexual thing, it's usually a control thing.
No, well, it's both, because usually it's having the control makes it sexual for them. Kind of like those BDSM relationships where someone's always tied up and someone's the dominant one and someone's the submissive one. It's kind of like that, but worse, I guess.
It's basically like that. Like, I know that there's some people that actually, well, this might even be a way that people have curbed that desire, where it's, where they,
Okay.
the girl
Hey.
The girl is physically forced to do what the guy wants, but it's consensual. Yeah.
Please smack him.
Well, that's kind of like what I was saying about the BDSM thing.
But
anyway,
Colleen's there. She's been quiet. I'm surprised.
Anyway, yeah. What were you saying, John?
Oh, Colleen's there.
Did you clean that up? Clean up your dog's pee.
Oh.
And take her out. Otherwise, she's just going to pee somewhere else.
I just want to finish the stream up real quick and see what John was saying. But what were you saying, John?
I'm gonna have to go because my computer's at 11%, and I don't have the charger right now because Mom and Dad were throwing a fit because I was talking apparently too loud.
Oh, well, go outside, go to the car, go do something, because I don't want to keep talking.
My computer's dying.
Anyway, we can set this up another time.
Well, I was actually gonna say we should just like three-way call, or I could put my speakerphone on and stuff, and me and Zach can sit here and talk to you. Or
okay, we can do that.
Woo! But anyway, on that note, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream there. Thank you to John, my brother. Do you care if I say your name? I think I already have though.
I don't give a crap. Just don't say my last name.
Well, I've said yours before. I was talking to the other one, but anyway, thanks to my brother John. Thanks to my brother Wes, and thanks.
Dragon of the East.
Quit cackling. Closing.
Okay, if you actually want to join streams later, you should actually create a YouTube channel called The Great Dragon of the East. But anyway, thank you to my brothers for joining me, and thank you to our earlier guest, Nachi Free. Please subscribe to him if you have not. He releases some good content, and even if you disagreed with some of what he said in this stream, it is honestly good to get more perspectives than just your own. Because I, for one, do not believe in echo chambers. That's why I follow him. I don't like. He's one of those guys. I don't agree with everything he says, but he's a good dude. He makes some great content. I think he's worth a subscription. Yeah, and he takes other people's arguments into consideration. I have mad respect for that dude. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for this discussion. It was a great one, including you, Russian Trollbot, for that good discussion with my brother. But anyway, that's all.
Stop that. If anybody wants to see another discussing gun control and guns and all that video between Hey Dude, me, and the other guy that was on here, I don't really know what his name was, but message Hey Dude, let him know on Twitter. Let Hey Dude know on Twitter, and he will get it set up.
Yes, definitely. Anyway,
also, any questions about like the whole psychology aspect of all this crap? Again, get in contact with Hey Dude, Mr. Person over here, and he will relay messages to me, and I will do my best to help clarify anything that I may not have communicated properly.
Okay, my computer's going to die in about 5 seconds, so I'm gonna go.
die.
All right, later.
Yeah, pretty much. But anyway, thank y'all for tuning in, and please have a safe night. And we end with the sound of garbage bags.